Hello. Hi there, Brian.
Hey, how's it going, Eridian?
Good, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the latest episode of the Community Staking Podcast. So I'm Eridian, I'm a Lido community lifeguard, and my role is to enable conversations and discussions just like this with people in the Lido community. So let's get started. Let's tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, first off, really appreciate you inviting me on and happy to share a little bit about my background and where I'm coming from. For those of you that don't know, my name is Brian. I am a SSV network contributor and specifically focused on the products that are being released in the SSV network ecosystem and uh, definitely taking part in some innovations coming out with Lido.
Okay, great. So yeah, we'll get into some more details in a bit about what SSV is and how that integrates with Lido. For now, let's talk a bit about yourself and learn about your background, just so we have some context around who we're talking to and how you got to where you are today. So, yeah, the first question is, when did you get into crypto? Like, why are you even here?
That is my absolute favorite question. I think that that's like the litmus test for where to gauge you are in crypto. So for myself, I would say happened around the sort of quiet times or just after one of the big cycles in 2016 or so. And just kind of interested. I think for a lot of people that came in that time, it's like Bitcoin was the gateway crypto into it
Yeah.
all. And as Ethereum was just coming out. So, I mean, I just jumped in as a investor and a classic speculator saying, this seems interesting enough. It was really around 2017 that I got more into it and just found that, okay, how do I kind of create a career out of this? Um, Actually, even less about a career. It was just like I found myself researching and reading things and trying to like see where the communities were around this, going to meetups originally in San Diego, California. Um, and that was right about the time that I was saying, okay, like maybe I can get more into development, but no one was really talking about blockchain development as much, at least in my circles that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I got a little bit of a technical background in doing like a fun coding boot camp. And still, I was trying to break into blockchain companies specifically. So there was a few that I was kind of participating with more as just like a outside member, not as like this is my career. Fast forward to basically the past 2 years or so, maybe two and a half. I've been now full time in the crypto space, working on metaverse projects, working on token launch projects, advising other companies when it comes to like token structures and economics and making it incentivized for all the different stakeholders. And so then luckily I found SSV during the this year, and now I am essentially working on, like I said earlier, um, helping SSV and sort of the greater DVT ecosystem become more integrated.
Hey, wow, that's a great background. We've heard some interesting stories, different people coming in at different times. It usually, as you said, happens at the height of one of these runs when people hear about it and want to get involved. But it is a great story when people like yourselves got in early and then stuck around, particularly to get involved in building the development side. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and now you're with SSV. We'll talk a bit more about like what SSV is specifically and what they've been doing, I guess, in the DVT landscape. Um, so you said about your background. So would you describe yourself as like more technical now or non-technical when you started? Just to give people an overview of that.
Yeah, I think I guess more of like how would you categorize me? It's in the non-technical, like product creative big picture. kind of a team organizer when it comes to actually building. But I still have a love for looking what's under the hood, looking at code, contracts, maybe being able to interact with contracts just at like the, Etherscan level and doing read write contracts from there. I'm always kind of, just for personal passion projects, YouTube, a few coding courses here and there. Like I said, I did a boot camp just to kind of get my feet wet. It's a long road though to be very technical. So it's like not undertaking that just, watching one YouTube video, you can, launch a full NFT program or launch your own token, which it's like, it's the nice thing about crypto is it's, it's kind of sold as the biggest barrier to entry. But I think with a lot of curiosity, you can just start chiseling away at it. So, for people that are non-technical, like not an engineer or a smart contract or developer, there's still a lot of different ways to be involved. And I think that my history kind of proves that. And just being sort of in the taking the long haul and just seeing the big vision for this industry overall. It's when I always talk to people outside of the crypto space, I just say, yeah, I work in the wild west of the internet.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great for people to hear that you don't have to be super technical. I want to keep breaking down that misconception or that barrier that everyone, or that lots of people seem to have, is that you must be technical to involved in crypto in general, or even in specifically the staking space. And that's why, particularly with like Lido and building this community of hopefully more solo stakers and home stakers, so you don't have to be as technical as people think. There's space for everyone in the community at all different levels. So that's great to hear. All right. So we know a bit about your background now and where you've come from and who you are. So let's talk about DVT. So DVT, distributed validated technology, we've talked about it a bit before on previous episodes. The idea of being able to, instead of running a single Ethereum validator on one machine, splitting the key. Best analogy is like a multi-sig wallet where multiple people sign for a duty, and then that duty is then an attestation or a block proposal happens when enough people have signed. So for example, if it's 3 out of 4, you just need 3 people to be online performing the duty for it to work instead of all 4. 7 out of 10 gives you even more flexibility. So that's the fundamentals of DVT. Is there anything else you want to add to that, or any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes I like to think about, instead of taking a key and going to get it copied, you take one key and chop it up into as many pieces as you actually need. There's some other great metaphors out there, but you nailed it.
Yeah, that's good. We try to make it as easy to understand as possible, something as esoteric and abstract as validated duties, and then sharing keys. Anything that can help people to get a better understanding is good. So there you go. That's DVT in general. Now SSV is a DVT protocol, so we haven't talked too much about the specifics of how SSV works compared to, say, other protocols or even just normal validation. So do you want to give an overview of that?
So essentially, actually, could you repeat that? It just lost you.
Just sorry, just an overview of SSV in general, so we don't have a specifics of like how SSV works. Like, is it smart contract based? Like, what are the specifics of SSV that make it work? Like a high level summary of what SSV is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like the secret sauce is just right there in front of you in terms of, like, we have the name SSV and network. So when we look at SSV as your secret shared validator, this is essentially exactly like how you broke it up into, is saying that it is of these, taking the example of 4 operators working in a coordination with one another. It's sort of secret because these operators in theory shouldn't really have any known knowledge about who these operators are, but should be able to have coordination through process of the network. which is what SSV has actually gone ahead and created. So by taking the stack software that you would need to essentially be a part of this network, is not only your consensus layer client, your execution layer client, and as well as your full node client being provided by the SSV. So that actually allows you to register and enroll as an operator. And it's not just, okay, the name operator, call me an operator. It's like, no, you're actually a part of a unified network that everyone's saying, I want to participate in this, but I don't really need to know who else is a part of this. I just know that sort of like the ethos of crypto, for at least the people that have like the moral case for it, is we're all working in good faith because we want this project to succeed. And so SSV is essentially the software and the series of contracts that allow operators to join essentially in a permissionless way. So that's actually what we're about to be launching now on mainnet, which is essentially anyone with the desire can register as an operator and essentially be in communication with that network. They can offer services that essentially a staker would be able to use their services. And there is the ecosystem that's run with the SSV token, which operators have the choice. They can either run publicly by saying, hey, if you pay me this small portion of SSV token, I will make sure everything is taken care of. The owner or the staker, let's say, would still have that key outright, and the operators are doing the coordinated signing. So to make sure that all runs smoothly, rewards are always going back to the staker, and operators are always getting rewarded. So it's creating this ecosystem with like sort of the grander vision is that this staking infrastructure can be applied to every staking protocol out there. It's how you essentially will increase resilience, distribution, and overall security of validation.
That's great.
I got it right there.
I think that covers it really well. I've used analogies trying to understand like how SSV is specifically different to either just solo stake it or solo validation without DVT. And then you've got protocols like OBOL and Diva, which are doing also doing DVT, but it's slightly differently. And the analogy that I've tried to use or found helpful is this idea of like, if you want to get somewhere, so if you're in your house and you want to get somewhere, you have options for modes of transport. So the single validator analogy would be that you buy a car, you outright buy the whole car and drive yourself somewhere. That's solo staking with 32 ETH, right? You just do it all yourself and that's it. Now with DVT, for example, something like OBOL, which is a closed network, and you just get a group of friends, would be like buying a car with a few friends, and then you all put a share in, and now you have the car and you can drive around and you can do that transportation together with that closed group of friends. Now I see SSV as more like Uber, where you say like, actually, I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to buy the hardware, and then I'm going to offer my services on the app, or in the Uber analogy. And the reason that's quite helpful is because if you just sit there as an Uber driver, you're not guaranteed for people to use your service. You have to hope that people choose you. And in the SSV case, you have to present, why people should choose you. It's fairly permissionless, readme so with Uber to join. So you can have an operator, but people still have to choose you. Whereas with Diva, which is another DVT protocol, that's more like a public bus, where actually you join and you say, hey, I'm getting on the bus. Now you don't have as much flexibility in how it works and where you end up. But the idea being that if you join, you will get a validator. You don't have to advertise and say like, please pick me. You just people will get on the bus. So it's just different analogies for how the protocols are used and how people interact with them. So do you think that fits well with SSV, the idea of like people come to you like validating as a service?
Eridian, that I'm going to steal that. I'll give you credit for the first 3 times, and then it's mine. I love that analogy because I'm also thinking, the other abstractions of where we go after this sort of rideshare validator distribution, and I think that's really where we kind of see the evolution is most people would say, okay, doesn't it make sense just to buy my own car? And it's like, well, you don't.
It might do. It depends what
Yeah,
you want.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like wherever you are, that's kind of like the services that are going to be available for you.
Yes. And
Um,
the analogy being that if you, the reason I like that is because if you have your own car, you can also be an Uber driver and have your own car. So therefore, you can run your own validators. You could actually do all of the in between. You could run with one single NUC, one box. You could run a Solar validator, a Noble validator, SSV, and Ziva all on the same machine. They're all doing different things, but the analogy stands. So yeah,
yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
please use it. If it helps people to understand what we're trying to do, then let's get it out there.
And I could add the addition, which is like where we might be going in this conversation, which is kind of like rideshare decentralized. Because right now, when it comes to rideshare, you have to have the infrastructure, you have to have the app, you have to have the coordination of all these drivers that are saying, okay, we can join this, but you know, in the future there can be distributed rideshare, where a driver could basically be saying, okay, I can actually like pick up these other riders who want to ride based on this new infrastructure that's sort of like the rideshare rails. So it's kind of where like I can at least say that SSV aims to be driving, because we understand that a lot of different protocols, whether it's like a Diva who's only saying, we only offer a public transportation model. Well,
Yep.
maybe we can still use our app or our, app or station, and we can also allow rideshare people to come there. And that's where SSV would come in and saying, hey, we were able to send some of our own operators there as well.
So if SSV is a protocol, it's a base layer, and this is something that I started to learn about a year ago when I started looking at SSV, is that SSV, it works below a lot of what people would view as like user-facing apps. So SSV, you can, if you have a validator key, you can go to the SSV web app and you can split the keys and share them out to your validators and use it like that. But that's like that's not necessarily like the full use case for it, because other people can come along and build their own front ends for it. They can it can be integrated into other protocols. So SSV underneath is just the ability to say there are a set of operators that are running and they can run your key shares. They can run your key shares and give you reliability and redundancy, geographic distribution, all these things. And then you don't have to worry or even think about it. So if we now talk a bit about, well, how does this fit in with Lido and the DVT trials that are happening with Lido right now, and the future of the DVT modules with Lido v2? So let's talk a bit about that and how the SSV protocol would fit in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So exactly like how you said, it's a protocol. It's really at the infrastructure level. So really the expectation and like the desire is, that we're opening up these tools for developers to be building very useful and unique use cases that they best see fit. So when it specifically comes to Lido, also a protocol, also needing ways to sort of diversify its infrastructure, with the release of their staking router. Staking router is, basically sort of now opening up this new highway. I like to think about it. And this new highway is saying, okay, we have our very strong main road that services all of our verified curated operators. And, we can see that as DBT grows as just this battle tested infrastructure, it should be able to basically create a parallel road to this major highway that Lido has already created, and saying, hey, now we can create this on-ramp for essentially new net node operators, whether that's a solo operator, more community operators that you have plenty of experience with, and essentially allowing this whole new community and operators to be joining into Lido. Now, how is that done? Through essentially creating this DVT on-ramp for operators to now say, this is my setup. I want to be a part of it. And that's where we'll have both protocols communicating with one another that basically take away all that heavy lifting that would have needed to be done. And essentially it's great on Lido's side to be saying, hey, we understand that, we are the popular kids on the block, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to stop innovating with new technology such as DVT, and shown a good track record with the past two test nets that have been run on it.
Yeah, that's great. I think the highway analogy is helpful too, to say that Lido has this well-established set of operators, and this is an on-ramp for new operators. The idea being that while Lido has many areas of improvements to work on, to do with everything from governance, token distribution, everything like that, dual governance proposals. One of the main things is that even if we solve those problems or improve those, we still need to have more operators. A protocol that has operator numbers in their 30s is not as robust as a protocol with operator numbers in the thousands, for decentralization and for robustness. And that's where these SSV modules come in. Now, the simple DVT module that's happening right now, we've discussed previously with Will on the podcast, that's kind of like a middle step, because even though the V2 router has been released, the modules still need to be developed and battle tested and proven to work reliably. So simple DVT is this middle step where we're using SSV, Lido using SSV on testnet and then hopefully mainnet with quite a large set of operators in the hundreds, which is a big jump from the current number. But it also means that we can get started a bit faster. We don't have to wait for the modules to be fully developed. So that's why the simple DVT as it stands is a middle step. And these modules that we're talking about that will be fully standalone, permissionless modules where anyone can join and say, hey, I'm running an SSV operator and I would like to receive ETH from Lido to run validators, essentially to say, if Lido has a validator, I would like to run one for Lido, and that may be bonded so that you put a small bond up and then you're able to run that. But the idea being that that's the end state, and SSV allows for that.
Yeah, I think that kind of encapsulates the idea from a high level. And as we grow and become more integrated, not only into Lido but into other staking protocols, it's sort of like also kind of envisioning like more fibers and more routes essentially being sent out, because especially like if we're looking at Lido, they've had very robust and a good track record for what it comes to staking protocols. Like that's why they're getting so much attention, because they're doing something well and they're able to replicate that. Now I think that when it specifically comes to like a DVT module as a whole, it's like, yes, end goal should be to where if you have that desire and ability and you want to start offering operator services, that you should be able to have access. So it's really about creating this ease of use on-ramp integration, especially with Lido, because I think that's going to be also the tide that raises all boats. And I think that getting more solo community stakers, solo and community stakers, and kind of creating these networks that all kind of want to help each other. And I think especially watching Ethereum as a whole become sort of, as it's being claimed, like the supercomputer, and it needs more validators running, it needs more redundancy, and that can be able to really shine a whole new light on also like crypto as a whole, that more people can say, oh, okay, it's a real, it's as real as it gets, it's well established, and it's just this awesome snowball effect.
So let's touch on that for a second. You mentioned more that we need more validators. Ethereum needs more validators, but recently we've been hearing that the validator apocalypse is coming, and if there's too many validators, then Ethereum will have problems, because if you get too many, the consensus mechanism won't work. So one of the things that DVT helps with is that you don't have to increase the number of validators to increase the number of operators and people running validators. So it's a bit like how an L2 increases throughput of Ethereum by having lots of compute done elsewhere and just submitting a smaller amount to the main chain. Similarly with DVT, you can have lots of people participating in signing and actually validating the chain in their small way, but without actually increasing the burden of validation on the beacon chain.
Yeah. Thank you for that correction, because I think that that's the story. Is mainly, we're kind of thinking about as the validator, as chunks of these 32 Ethereum are being staked and doing that validation, but it comes to the actual duties that are performed and sort of spreading that responsibility out amongst different operators. And I think that that's really something, as Ethereum is always saying, okay, we got this new test net, it's Holsky, there's different EIPs coming out to maybe increase how much one validator is, and so there is a lot of technical understanding in how the network can be better stress tested and have more throughput. So yeah, it's kind of like DVT is coming out as like the L2 of staking, and definitely able to see like where is this going to go? And it's like the nice thing about what's happening right now, especially in staking, is there are more people that are coming on to say, I can either just be an operator, or maybe I have a new creative way that I can envision doing validation duties and things of that nature. And that's why there's amazing grants that are out there. I know that SSV has a great grants program that people can take advantage of to really help innovate these things and to help distribute the innovation.
Hugely, yeah. So let's talk about some more specifics of SSV then, the technology, some things that I found quite interesting learning about, and to make people's lives easier. So running a validator is potentially big and scary as a solo staker, with the amount of ETH involved and having to manage so much yourself. Now, if I want to be an SSV operator, I set up a machine, and you do have to run the chain. So you run a mainnet chain and you start this SSV operator. And all you have to do is there's a private key that gets generated. That's the operator's key. And then you just keep that safe. Now, once that's running and once that's safe, you can have somebody come to you and say, hey, can you run one of my key shares? But you don't have to be at your computer. You don't have to be anywhere for that. It's completely asynchronous, no human interaction needed. So that means you could be on holiday or sat on a beach somewhere, and more validators could be added to your operator, and you would be being paid for that with the SSV token. You set a fee. So every time someone uses you, you would get paid that fee, but it doesn't require any interaction. So I think that's amazing, the fact that there's none of this coordination required. You have to all sit down together in a room and do like even a DKG or anything. That can all be completely abstracted away. So you just run the operator and that's it.
It's
I was going to say, I think that's going to be really, so that's going to be really helpful, particularly for systems at scale, because while it is easy to say, let's just split the key and there you go, it's working now, the real problem is how robust it is to change. Because in real life, operators, if you have, let's say, 10 people running a validator key, particularly with permissionless operators, some people might say, oh, I want to stop now, or I've been offline for a few weeks, or I want to use different people in different geographic locations for my validator. But latency issues, everything. There's so many real world issues that impact validator's effectiveness and a particular cluster, and therefore having the ability to change and programmatically through smart contracts is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that when you have to understand what are the trade-offs when it comes to set it and forget it mentality, because that there still is a lot of interworkings when it comes to the actual changes that need to happen on the network level. That being, maybe a validator needs to be exited, maybe the coordination of keys need to be regenerated, and our main goal is to figure out how the level of necessary on-chain events that we need to focus on that can be automatized, versus ones that say, okay, we might need a little bit more participation. I'd say from my experience and witnessing and sort of looking at the metrics of things, luckily a lot of people are, once they're in, they want to stay in. And I think that when it comes to challenges that operators might see or experience, I want to pause my whole setup and things like that. These are things that we're actively speaking with the community to make sure that we do have the right checkpoints put into place and the right sort of sandbox that we can create for all stakeholders, making sure that people are going to be able to be properly alerted, and that they can also feel like that there is a place, that there's an open forum that we can have these discussions in, because still behind the operator, at least for now, there is a human being behind there that is has their sort of end costs. And so we have to be mindful of that when it comes to the things that we're actually changing under the hood.
Yes, and I think that this is where the different protocols, particularly with OBOL and SSV and Diva, as I mentioned before, have different use cases. So if you have complete control over a system, if you, for example, are a single company and you just want to have your validator spread across multiple machines, it's just literally in the same data center, you just want redundancy on 4 machines, for example, then OBOL could be a good use case for that, because you're in complete control of it. You do the DKG, you can do it all within your control, and you don't need third parties or anyone to interact with. Now, if you're in a cluster of 10 people and one person wants to leave, the challenge with something like OBOL is that you would have to coordinate with the other 9 to get something to happen. Either you exit the validator, or you can't, but you essentially the individual, the single person who wants to leave or has high latency or something that causes the cluster to have a problem, has an impact on everyone else, not them. Like, it's more like if they leave, they create the problem for everyone else. Whereas with SSV, you wouldn't have that, because the validator manager, whoever created the validator, has the ability to control that, and the other people aren't penalized essentially for a single person having an issue. Now, Diva, as I said, with the bus analogies, that there's very little control over it. It's a fully automated system. It just does it all itself. There's no manual interaction on validator and operator selection. And what that means, it's great from an automation permissionless perspective. But if you do have problems, for example, like latency issues, you can ping people and say see their latency at that exact moment, but latency does change throughout the day. If you've got working with home stakers and someone decides to watch Netflix in the same house, then that's going to create a problem with potentially a problem with your connection, depending on how stable it is. And ISPs and things have lots of variability. So having a bit more manual control SSV has a lot of use cases there, and then Diva may work better in others where you don't need as much control. So that just give an idea of the different levels of granularity and control, and where it might work, each protocol might work better.
Yeah, and I can always more so speak just to the SSV side of things, and just saying how really focused on its developer and operator focused, that people can really come in and sort of play around and practice on the testnet, and essentially from there, it's you can kind of understand how much is actually being supported by the network and the different configurations that can happen, because maybe in the future there'll be a lot many different kinds of staking that people want to get into, and different coordinations. And I think at the end of the day, it's like you have to give users and specifically operators the best sort of fluid action in between. These are the services that I want to provide. if something happens, like, I hope it's not all just because I needed to like make changes and, real world events actually happen. So the best thing that can keep supporting that is this network, is the ability to actually say we can share the responsibility and still give the best outcome to the whole ecosystem, staking ecosystem.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think the integration with Lido fits well with what we've just talked about. It's on the horizon. It's being developed right now. As you said, it's being actively developed. The simple DVT module is this middle step where we'll be testing everything out in a slightly more manual way to see what it's like working with solo stakers and home stakers, and just testing it all out to start with, so that we're ready and confident by the time it comes to the module, the full module deployment. Well, that was great. I think we learned like a lot more about SSV, and great to have those different analogies to help people visualize what's actually going on underneath these acronyms, DVT and SSV and everything. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we bring it to a close here then?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm looking forward to also speaking with those community members that are joining up and being a part of Simple DVT. I think it's an amazing initiative that Lido has really been spearheading, and really happy to support it from the SSV network side of things. And yeah, as long as people understand that this is a community worth getting involved in, and checking out the Discords and Twitter for updates, and listening to more amazing podcasts like this.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, we'll be sharing all these links on the X post when we post these links, and also in the YouTube description as well. So yeah, if anyone hasn't looked at SSV before or been involved with other things, it's a great time to have a look now, particularly with them moving to mainnet, but also running testnet. I've got JTO v2 on Gurley at the moment, and you'll be able to run an operator and get involved that way and see how easy it is, so that when the Lido trials are either open again for new participants, or it does become permissionless, you'll be ahead of the rest to get involved. So yeah, check it out.
Awesome. Eridian, thanks again.
Thank you, Brian. It's been great. All right, we'll speak soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.